Hello, I'm Dr. Jigare Pancha, an occupational therapist. So here I have got you the another video of infections and tumors of musculoskeletal system. There are many more videos to know more things. Stay tuned to our channel. So just to run up, previously it was mentioned about the acute osteomyelitis, the acute multifocal or hematogenous osteomyelitis basically, and the other neonatal osteomyelitis with the pathogenesis, diagnosis, and for the CRMO, that is recurrent multifocal osteomyelitis. So we have conveyed that the information regarding this that about in the previous lecture. So for this lecture, we will be covering the other topics of osteomyelitis related to this. So in that special form of chronic osteomyelitis, basically we'll be talking about. So in this, the thing is we'll talk about Gary's sclerosing osteomyelitis. So if we go in detail about Gary's sclerosing osteomyelitis, so in German-speaking countries, the diagnosis of primary chronic osteomyelitis is morphologically associated with plasma cellular uh, albuminous or sclerosing non-pyogenic osteomyelitis. So these three forms basically, that is plasma cellular, albuminous, and or sclerosing non-pyogenic osteomyelitis. So Gare, that is that he, did not means he did not consider his chronic sclerosing osteomyelitis to be separate condition. So, but a specific form, a sequela of acute infections of osteomyelitis. So that's why this term is comes under specific form of chronic osteomyelitis of say in the form of Gary sclerosing osteomyelitis. So further, if you see as early as in 1893, he discussed the low bacterial virulence and the immune status of the organism as a prerequisite for this development. Also, today the concept of Gary's sclerosing osteomyelitis is often incorrectly considered to be the separate, non-conditional rather than a particular form of progression. So, if we say the clinical findings, that is the onset is gradual, non-specific, variable symptoms with a tendency to progress. They are particularly prone to localization in long bones. So, however, there are expectations. Local hyperthermia is typical but not mandatory. So basically, they will have issues in the long bones, which is another form. And further, in microbiological uh, examination, if the evidence is seen that the evidence of bacteria is rare, although the bacteria are assumed to be the trigger. And also, the thing is, the possible reason for this is the low virulence of responsible bacteria. Histology, that is the diagnosis is substantiated by the intralesional biopsies. The histology detects sclerosis of medullary cavity, but only very few inflammatory cells. Also, X-ray image, that is expansion of the cortical bone, uh, irregular structure, sclerosis of the medullary cavity, the periostem which appears to be elevated. So that is all things which are being seen here. As you can see, there is an image I have shared for Gary sclerosis, sclerosing osteomyelitis of the right ilium of 15-year-old boy. The X-ray and the CT scan of the entire ilium is affected, including the acetabular area, and the bone shows both significant sclerosis as well as irregularity distributed lytic components. Further, in therapy, if you see, there is no standard procedure. In some cases, the fenestration and exposure of the medullary cavity, if possible, is with the biopsy and are sufficient in order to initiate the regression. In other cases, recovery does not occur until after full resection of the sclerotic bone segments. It is important that periosteal and medullary revascularization remain possible. So this is achieved, for example, by reaming the medullary cavity or via extension longitudinal fenestration. I also would like to share information that it is a rare disease and it mainly affects children and young adults. It is associated with a low-grade infection which may be due to the dental caries, that is cavities in the teeth. The body of the mandible may show irregular, lucent, opaque changes in the subperiosteal opaque layering along inferior border. It is chronic osteomyelitis with subperiosteal bone and collagen deposition. So there is no suppuration and sinus formation. Again, it was first described by the Swiss surgeon called Carl Gary. So just in little more description, it is a specific type of chronic osteomyelitis, and it mainly affects, as I mentioned, children and young adults, typically the mandible. Also, with odontogenic infection resulting from dental caries. There are certain radiographic features. If you see that, that is a localized overgrowth of bone on the outer surface of the cortex. So this mass of bone, if you see, is which is supracortical but subperiosteal, is smooth, fairly calcified, and is often described as a duplication of the cortical layer of the mandible. So redundant cortical layering of a bone, this onion skinning, is often considered as a pathognomical feature. And again, the history and etymology is done by Carl Gary in 1893, and that's how this condition is formed and having certain phases. So the thing is, this kind of issues not only affects the individual in his ambulation and performance of the movement, but also affects the mandibular, the jaw area in which the intake of the food is very much affected. So for all that, there are certain management in which you need to provide level wise food, level 1, level 2, level 3 food. So basically level 1, which is a very light, soft, pure type of food material. So that kind of can be given to the individual because of the issue in the mandibles, because there are other chances of infection, because if the grains or stay back within the gums, then there can be another cause of infection, can even lead to further issues. So that's why proper stable position of feeding is very much important. If it is in a very young child, then again that feeding is an issue, and the emulsion textured food is very much preferred when you provide food to this kind of individual. Also, if you target on the ambulation, basically first to we need to check all the static components of the individual, maybe in standing and in the also getting up from sit to stand, and also in changing of the postures, in transfers, basically in moving from one place, even when the child is hopping. So in that conditions, it is very much important to know these factors. And also more of the children are affected at certain point, and as this is the x-ray which you are seeing is the image, the CT scan and the x-ray which you're seeing is the image of a 15-year-old boy. So as this age group, individuals will have a tendency to move around and do not sit at a place, so that will also cause a certain level of movement and the enthusiasm of ambulation. So that all things too is always need to be considered when you go to check this certain level of issues. Also, in this part of lecture, we will also cover the CRMO, that is chronic recurrent multifocal osteomyelitis, and also specific osteomyelitis, tuberculosis. And with that, you can will be continuing with the BCG osteomyelitis, and as well as exogenous osteomyelitis to be considered. So all this consideration is important in the case of osteomyelitis at the point of acute or even at the point of chronic conditions. So that was about the Gary's sclerosing osteomyelitis, and further now we will move on to CRMO, as I just mentioned before. So in the next slide, I have also mentioned the image of an actual patient with the radiographic image basically. So first, initially, I will describe everything, and then we'll talk in detail about CRM. So go start with chronic recurrent multifocal osteomyelitis. So as to describe that in this disorder, the multiple inflammatory sites of infection develop, and although no pathogens can be identified, so any bone can be affected. So the metaphyses of the long bone are more likely to be affected. So that's why, however, the vertebra or the vertebra plana, the sternal end of the clavicle, this sacroiliac joint or the mandible may also be involved. So you can find this all involvements at certain point. And this condition is also known as SAPHO syndrome. That is synovitis acne, pustulosis, and hyperostosis and osteomyelitis. So now, actually, the main question is now being that discussed that as fatal to this is actually a rheumatic or a autoimmune disorder rather than a typical of osteomyelitis. So now it is a kind of a questionable form that in what category we are supposed to keep it in, whether in the case of a rheumatic issue or issue or even the osteomyelitis problem. Further, you have the clinical findings that which are that the local pain without intrinsic general symptoms. So the symptoms may be abate intermittently and then recur at the same or other locations. So there are days, months, or sometimes even years which can pass between these episodes. Okay. So if we see that occasionally, we can say that occasionally the changes also occur in the skin, such as the palmoplantar pustulosis, psoriasis, or acne, or in conjunction with or also following the onset of the bone pain. In laboratory assessment, you need to see about the moderate increase in the ESR, which is possible. And in therapy, there is non-steroidal analgesics actually in the medical side, which is being provided in these conditions. That and possibly by phosphonates, and that is generally not recommended administration of the antibiotics. In prognosis, it is considered that it has a good prognosis. I'll just take it all together only. So let's continue in CRMO itself. So if we talk in further detail of CRMO, that the chronic recurrent multifocal osteomyelitis, that is CRMO, or the chronic non-bacterial osteomyelitis, that is called CNO, is a disorder that causes bone pain due to the inflammation in the bones, not caused by the infection. Okay, so that is another thing. There are certain facts which I like to share with you that one or more multiple bones can be affected. Treatment usually starts with the NSAIDs, that is ibuprofen. You have naproxen, naloxone, but some patients need stronger medications, including methotrexate, uh, biologics, that is enter, Intercept, adalimumab, then infliximab, and anakinra, and biphosphonates, pamidronate, zoletronic acid. Also, the studies shows that it has shown that 40% remission rate and no active disease after 1 to 5 years of the treatment, but 50% recurrence within 2 years, and so close follow-up is needed. So, if we say that the chronic recurrent multifocal osteomyelitis can take months to years to diagnose. And CRMO was previously thought to be a rare, occurring in about zero point 0.4 out of 1 lakh people. And as the recognition of CRMO is increasing, it appears to be more than that. So, in fact, if you see, CRMO may have been nearly as common as bone infections. So, the average age of CRMO starts is 9 to 10 years, and most girls are affected than boys. So, if you said that CRMO is an autoimmune disorder, as I mentioned before, so uh, meaning the immune system attacks the bones, causing inflammation, even though there is no infection. A small fraction of the people with CRMO have a genetic component. So some families may have more than one person with CRMO. Then the bone pain is the most common symptom. Let me tell you this: the bone pain is the most common symptom, and there is usually tenderness at the affected side. That is, it hurts to be pushed on like that. It's a focus point basically. So the pain can cause the person to avoid using the affected body part. Some people with CRMO can develop arthritis, joint swelling, fatigue, which is common during the active disease. And the other thing is that the diagnosis is again based on exam of the imaging such as X-ray, bone scan or MRI, bone biopsy, laboratory blood test. So the lab tests are common and normal in most people, but can show anemia. That is, blood doesn't carry enough oxygen through your body, and elevated markers of the inflammation. That is ECR or CRP in others. So the bone that has been altered or damaged can be seen on X-ray, bone scan, and MRI as well. So the MRI is the most sensitive type of imaging to find signs of CRM. And the bone biopsy may be needed to rule out the infection or cancer. So the biopsy is a CRMO usually shows acute short-term or chronic long-term inflammation. Again, in treatment, which is dependent on how severe it is and which bones is affected. Some people respond to NSAIDs such as naproxen, meloxicam, or indomethacin, and these medications can cause stomach upset and easily bruising. So people on this medication long term should have been lab monitoring for liver and kidney function. Also, it is said that people with continuing pain and active bone lesion can require strong immunosuppressive medications such as methotrexate. Methotrexate can cause nausea and requires regular lab monitoring. It can be dangerous in people who drink alcohol and also cause defects if taken during pregnancy. So, if you say there are additional treatment options like biological medications and such as uh, etanercept, then adalimumab, then anakinra, so which are injectable medications, or infliximab, which is an IV invasion. This is all the medical part basically. Also, the biphosphonates such as pamidronate and zoledronic acid are another type of treatment for CRMO. So these medications are intravenous infusions used to treat bone conditions such as osteoporosis. Biphosphonates can cause flu-like symptoms for a few days after the infusion. Monitoring of disease activity, CRMO is monitored by the symptoms like imaging studies and the MRI is the best way to assess the resolution of bone activity and bone lesions or any detect of new lesions basically. So that's how the CRMO is been seen throughout, and it has a good prognosis also. Then we talk about specific osteomyelitis, that is tuberculosis. So in this, a bone infection with a Mycobacterium tuberculosis is a rare, and although the tuberculosis primarily affects the lungs, bones, and joints, which are common locations for the post-primary tuberculosis infection sites. So typical presentation, if you see, that is finger and or the metacarpal bones in children under 5, a cystic expansion of the bone known as spina ventosa, that is tuberculous dactylitis, Then in spine, that is collapse and fusion of the vertebrae, causing a severe gibbous deformity. Abscess along the psoas muscle down to inguinal ligament. Joint tuberculosis typically in monoarticular in the large joints with pain, swelling, effusion, contracture, and ultimately destruction of the joint. So that's things generally which is seen in all different typical presentation. Also, laboratory test is not characteristic to this. Also, biopsy that is essential for diagnosis. Tuberculosis granulomas with Langerhans giant cells and epithelial cells, also possibly with acid-resistant rod-shaped bacteria. In microbiological, you see there is direct bacteriological analysis does not lead to identification of the microbe. So if the direct preparation is negative, it is necessary to wait for the results of the cultures. Newer procedures can be reduce the waiting time until a definitive diagnosis is made, and resistance testing is finalized down to 2 or 3 weeks, and PCR can be helpful. So in therapy, if we talk, that is antibiotic generally as a combination of a rifampicin and isoniazid for 9 to 12 months. Tuberculosis spondylitis also always requires surgical management with debridement of the affected vertebra, and if necessary, strut grafting with analogous bone. Also, we say about the BCG osteomyelitis, that is occasionally chronic osteomyelitis may be triggered as the result of BCG vaccine with weakened tuberculosis pathogens. So, the metaphyseal infection sites develop close to the vaccine area within 4 years of vaccination. Also, local pain occurs without the general signs of infection, and the X-ray image may mimic a tumor. So, histological analysis identifies tuberculosis granulomas, and the infection site generally recovers without further incident following curettage. Also, exogenous osteomyelitis, that is last one. In this, it talks about the disinfection which also occur in children and adolescents are caused by severe open injuries, penetrating, soiled, or inadequately treated skin wounds, and purulent bursitis or surgical procedures in terms of diagnosis and treatment. And thus, there are no significant differences compared to adults. So that's all for the today's class, and we'll be taking further. We'll be talking about further about infections, infectious arthritis in the next part of the lecture. Thank you. And these are the references for as you can refer this for further studying and going deeper into the topic.